I made it my journey to build every character from Super Smash Bros. As a playable character in Dungeons & Dragons. But there's a problem. You see, I started this journey over 4 years ago. It was literally something I wanted to do starting with the third video on this channel. There's been plenty of characters I've built, rebuilt with new D&D updates and all sorts of stuff, but the big problem is that I make a deep dive video about every character that I usually build. And Smash Bros. Has a bunch of characters that have very little content about them. Like, how the heck am I going to make an entire video with content about a character that beeps and boops and moves around while he's just an outline of a person? Well, since I've done so many in-depth characters, it's time to hammer out the rest of them, because there's over 80 characters in Smash Bros. To build. So I found which ones are the most popular and most played in Smash Bros. And went through them one by one, building them rapid fire, so we can get all of them done in a 2-part video, going from the least played in Smash Bros. To the most. But I have to do them rapid fire. We're going to cover the species, the class, and any notable features that are required to make sure that the character feels like what they're supposed to. I'll even do the quick highlights of the characters I've already actually done deep dive builds on, but I'll try to make sure to include links to the longer videos on them. And as always, if you want the character sheets for all of these builds, they'll be up on Patreon, and you can have an entire Smash Bros. Tournament and see who comes out on top. I'd actually be really curious to know who would win using the D&D builds. But without further ado, let's start powering through them. The 82nd most popular character to play in Smash Bros. Is Steve from Minecraft. As far as a species, just go with human. He's pretty blocky, but human still works. I was tempted to go with an artificer when it comes to all the crafting and stuff for his class, but in Smash, his crafting is a bit more limited and simplified. So instead, go with a cleric, and for a subclass, go with a cleric of the Forge. They're all about making things, they can use most weapons, they have a decent amount of fire spells for dumping lava on somebody, and they have access to the Fabricate spell for anything that you need to craft on the fly. At number 81 for the most popular, we have Sora from Kingdom Hearts. I actually did a deep dive build on my channel for this one twice, with some variations between them. So check it out if you want a level by level, but for a quick summary, go with Halfling for his shorter stature and big old feet. Then he makes a pact with his Keyblade, so go with a Warlock. Grab Pact of the Blade, and you can go with either a Hexblade, since it's all about the Keyblade, which is what I did the first time, but then the second time around I went with Celestial. Because, as we all know, Kingdom Hearts is light, and Celestial Warlocks are all about radiant damage. Then top it all off with a solid amount of Bard for the power of friendship, and grab some elemental spells and some summons to get everything you need from the Kingdom Hearts abilities. At number 80 on the list, we have Olimar. He's all about summoning a ton of small creatures, but in D&D 2024, they got rid of the majority of how mass summoning works. But one way you can still keep this idea alive is by going with a gnome for his species, and then go with a Swarm Keeper Ranger. It keeps the concept, even though Dungeons & Dragons took away a bit of the high-level ability of mass summoning, but Swarm Keepers are all about having a bunch of tiny summons. At 79, we have the Mii Sword Fighter. It's the most basic of basic ideas, so go with the most basic of basic builds. Go with a human champion fighter. No need to elaborate. At 78 on the list, we have Diddy Kong, and it's practically a war crime that we haven't gotten an update to Diddy Kong Racing from Nintendo, because they just don't want to hurt their precious Mario Kart more than they already have with the latest Mario Kart game. But putting that frustration aside, go with a Hadozi from Spelljammer. It's basically just a monkey species, and then go straight for an artificer, since he does make a lot of stuff out of coconuts, and go with an artillerist, since he has peanut guns and all the other crazy stuff he makes, like jetpacks and other ridiculous things he makes out of trees and coconuts. Then the 77th most played character in Smash Bros. Is Wario. Wario is all about chaos while having some crazy facial hair, so go with a dwarf for the crazy stash and general short stature, then grab at least enough levels in Paladin for Find Steed. That way you get his motorcycle taken care of. Then finish off the rest of your levels with Wild Magic Sorcerer for some pure chaos from WarioWare. At the 76th slot, we have Meta Knight. grab the old variant Tiefling from a slightly older version of D&D. It's still viable after the 2024 update, but this older variant Tiefling allows you to choose a winged Tiefling, so you get those bat-like wings right away. Then go with some solid sword fighting and go straight fighter with the Battle Master subclass, so you can add some flourishes with that sword. 75 on the list gives us Villager. This one's a little tougher, but he likes catching bugs, making homes, and he's got some self-healing. So go with a human because it's fairly apparent that they're a human, but you could probably make an argument for a different species if you really wanted to. The more important part is the class and subclass. I would go with a druid and go with Circle of the Land. You can use Thorn Whip for your net, Druid Grove to make a home, and specialize in the tropical land under the Land Druid because they get Insect Plague as a spell by default. Not to mention, in Animal Crossing, you're usually on an island, so tropical is probably fitting. At number 74, we have Rosalina. She lives amongst the stars, so I would actually go with an Aasimar for a species, since they're more of a celestial creature, but then while most people would probably assume a stars druid, I think with how she inspires Mario, a bard might be a better fit. And then you can choose the College of the Moon. They get similar spells that feel like starry things, but it just so happens to be a little more moon focused. Basically one step away from just rebuilding Sailor Moon. 73 on the list gives us Bowser Jr. Kind of like Bowser, but makes stuff and doesn't need fire breath. So go with a Turtle for the species, and then go with a Battlesmith Artificer. Just make sure that your turtle is small so it can ride around on the steel defender that battlesmiths get. That way you can ride around in that smiley face thing. The steel defender can do plenty of attacks, just like the thing you're riding can do. And you get some additional spells to cover anything else you need. Then 72nd on the list, we have another Mario character with Dr. Mario. I've built Mario a couple times, but never Dr. Mario, so we can take some of my other Mario builds and make them a bit more healing focused. Start with a dwarf. They're short in stature just like Wario and have that iconic facial hair so you can get Mario's mustache. But when it comes to the classes, because you want to do a little bit of a multi-class, go with a monk. This gives you your punching, you get better jumping with Step of the Winds, since originally Mario was known as Jumpman, and then go with a Way of Mercy for some healing. Then if you want some extra healing, grab some Druid, but maybe go with a Circle of Stars. That way you get a touch of Mario Galaxy, but you also get the Chalice form that the Stars Druid gets, which allows them to boost their healing, really leaning into being a doctor. 71 on the list, we got the Mii Gunner. So we need a basic blaster gunslinger. Go with a human, but go with an artillerist artificer. They get a literal cannon they can use, and they can pick it up for a hand blaster or plenty of other shooty style spells. The 70th most popular character to play in Smash Bros. Is Duck Hunt. There's still no dog species in D&D, so another option is to go with the Shifter. They can take on plenty of animalistic characteristics. Then you get to specialize what type of animal, so go with Wild Hunt for your Shifter subclass. The Shifter got an update in the more recent Eberron book, and this allows you to lean into being a hunting dog by going with Wild Hunt. Then go with a Beastmaster Ranger to have a duck to help you out. You literally can have a bird companion with that subclass. 69 on the list, we have Shulk, another character that I actually did a deep dive for. But the quick overview, he's a human, and he's a wizard, and he's a blade singer, who has some awesome sword enhancements, but can also boost the party and have some divination magic. 68 on the list gives us Pac-Man. You need to be a small yellow thing, so go with an Auto Gnome from Spelljammer. They even tend to be depicted as yellow, and they're usually small. But you usually just go around chomping on stuff, so go with a Barbarian and go with Path of the Beast. They have a big chomping attack they can do, so just lean into it. At number 67, we have Kazuya from Tekken. He's a martial artist, but has a demon form and a few laser blast kind of abilities. So go with a Tiefling for the demon form, and then go with a monk for the martial arts. Then top it all off with the subclass Sun Soul for some laser blast things, since Sun Soul monks are basically just Dragon Ball Z characters. At number 66, we have Toon Link. I've made normal Link on my channel, but Toon Link might be a bit different, and actually a bit simpler. For getting a more cartoon style, I would probably go with a forest gnome. Link usually comes from the forest, and gnomes are often depicted as having more cartoony proportions. To cover everything from Wind Waker, make sure you have the sailor background, but for the class and subclass, it's pretty easy. Just go with a ranger and go with the hunter subclass. You want to go with more of a strength-based ranger, which is slightly less common, but still not unheard of. That way you can lean into the master sword and shield style of fighting, but not ignore using a hero's bow. 65 on the list gives us Lucas, similar to Ness, who I have built on the channel, but a bit different. Go with human, but instead of more defensive stuff like I grabbed for Ness, go with a bit more offensive, but still stick with a wizard. And to lean into the more offensive style and overall abilities, go with an evoker wizard. Just make sure you have find familiar and you can summon a snake to cover the snake he always whips out at people. 64 on the list gives us Me Brawler. Just a character that punches and kicks, but very basic. Go with a human, go with a monk for punching and kicking, and go with a more basic monk subclass and go with Way of the Open Hand. About as basic as you can get. At 63, we have Pit and Dark Pit. Another one I did a deep dive about, but go with Aasimar for the angel-like species, then go with a multi-class of Cleric with the Light subclass, since that's literally who Pit worships, the goddess of light, and then top it off with some Hunter Ranger to hone in the dual-wielding scimitars and bow skills. Number 62 gives us Rob the Robot. His moveset is actually pretty simple, so while his species would be a Warforged to cover his robot-like nature, you don't want to go high-tech for his abilities. So go with a Sun Soul Monk, it covers the energy blast and plenty of melee attacking. 61 on the list gives us Mega Man. I love doing an in-depth video for him, and I love the Mega Man games, but at his core, he's a robot boy with a blaster arm. So go with a Warforged and then an Artificer with the Artillerist subclass for some major blasting. 60 on the list, we have Greninja, getting a streak going of characters that I've done in-depth builds for, but go with a Grung for the species because it's a frog-like species from a special add-on book in D&D that they did for a very special charity. And then grab a 3-way multiclass. Go with a monk that's a warrior of the elements for the ninja style but being a water Pokemon. Then grab a tiny bit of rogue to lean a little more into the ninja stuff, but go with the Scion of 3 subclass. This gives us plenty of ninja stuff, but it also gives us a bit more darkness. By going with Scion of the 3, we can give ourselves resistance to necrotic damage, and Greninja is also a dark type Pokemon, so it really fits. Then finish it all off with a Circle of the Sea Druid, giving us plenty more water Pokemon in our Dungeons & Dragons build. 59 gives us Pyra and Mithra. I did them as a combo build for a video, going with Warforged since they're actually summonable swords, not actual humans as they might look. Then they're summoned by somebody else, which is like having a pact with someone. So I would go with a Warlock and go with the Hexblade, while trying to balance the speed of Mithra and the fire spells of Pyra. Then top it all off with a tiny bit of Draconic Sorcerer to get a little extra Pyra fire stuff. 58 gives us Lucario. Since they're a fighting type Pokemon who can do a big energy ball, it's pretty easy, just go with a Sun Soul Monk, but the hard part is actually the species. Being a fox-like creature, I would go with Shifter, and then for the Shifter subclass, lean into the Swift Stride type of Shifter, since foxes feel very swift in my head. At number 57, we have Luigi. I've built him once before, but I think I might build him very differently now. Keep him human, since he's the taller brother, he doesn't have to worry about that short stature. Then start with Monk. Go with Warrior of the Elements. This gives you all the basic Mario stuff, with the jumping, the punching, and the power-ups, like the Fire Flower or the Ice Flower. But to deal with constantly being surrounded by ghosts in Luigi's Mansion, grab a decent amount of levels in Cleric, so you can use Turn Undead and later possibly destroy them. 56 gives us Piranha Plant. Probably one of the harder builds to do while being true to character, mostly because they don't have straight up plant creatures in D&D that you can play as, due to a slight conflict about Ents, thanks to the idea being partially owned by the Tolkien estate. But in D&D, I guess we can go with an Earth Genasi. They're very Earth focused and even get past without trace so you can hide in pipes better. Then since you're all about chomping, grab most of your levels in Beast Barbarian and focus on nothing but mostly bite attacks, although you can also do slashing attacks with claws to spin around your very sharp leaves. Number 55, Mr. Game and Watch. Probably the weirdest one, but he does have one notable ability to do with an attack that hits a random number, but he's still more of a melee attacker at the same time, and often uses a big hammer. So for a species, I would go with Kalishtar from Eberron. They're a species that's part dream and part person, and being a solid silhouette of someone seems kind of fitting for this species. Then when choosing a class, go with a barbarian for the big hammer, and choose the subclass Wild Magic to deal with the random number that can occur with one of his moves, but this subclass does force you to roll a d8 and just see what happens. Number 54 gives us Little Mac. He's a boxer with a big charge up punch, so go with a human, but for lots of punching, go with Monk, and then for a charge up punch, go with Warrior of the Open Hand. At 17th level, they get Quivering Palm, which is literally just a charge-up punch. And speaking of charge-up punch, at 53, we have Donkey Kong. His build requires a couple differences though. First, make him a Hadozi because he's a gorilla, and Hadozi are a monkey-like species from Spelljammer, just like we did with Diddy Kong. Then grab 3 levels in Barbarian first, and go with Path of the Giant, for the times he gets to an enormous size. Then snag 17 levels of Way of the Open Hand Monk for a massive charge-up punch. 52, we have Sephiroth. I did a huge Final Fantasy VII video a while back, and that was after I made Sephiroth and Cloud in a combo video in the super early days of my channel. But he's got a huge longsword while being obsessed with bringing down a meteor. So for a species, go with Aasimar to lean into the one-winged angel bit. Then go all in with a Blade Singer Wizard. This gives you some solid sword fighting skills, while at the same time you can later grab Meteor Swarm for a spell. 51, we have Zero Suit Samus. I did a combo video for Samus and Zero Suit, which I built twice, but if I just want to do Zero Suit, she's nimble with a blaster, so I would actually do it differently than I did with most of the in-depth builds, and go with a human and then go with a monk for the quickness, but lean into Kensai for the subclass. Because if you're just going with a Zero Suit Samus, this allows you to lean into a hand crossbow for the blaster as a Kensai, and a whip for the energy whip. Then you get the high mobility, and you can really lean into the Zero Suit part since monks get unarmored defense. 50 gives us the other side of Samus with Samus and Dark Samus. Still go with human, but you get a seriously upgradable set of armor. So go with Artificer and choose the Armorer subclass. Just don't forget about Audiluke's Resilient Sphere for a spell, because that'll allow you to turn into a little ball and roll around when you need to. 49 gives us King K. Rool. Finally, I get a chance to use Lizard Folk for a species. Then followed up with the Noble background, since you're a king and all. Then since lizard folk already get a bite attack, you can focus on other stuff like his ability to reflect some damage. So you can choose the barbarian and select the updated Path of the Berserker, since they get the retaliation ability, attacking folks that attack you. At 48, we have Simon and Richter Belmont. You need to make that whip really good since that's their big thing, but also hunt vampires and Dracula himself. I did a decent deep dive on them, but I might redo them at some point. But the main idea for the original build is that you choose human, but since you're all about hunting down evil monsters, you can choose the Monster Hunter subclass from Ranger. They're all about hunting down more specific monsters. I actually used the older version of Ranger, so you could select monster types like undead for vampires, then monstrosities and fiends for everything else that you fight in the Castlevania games. You get plenty of ways to boost up your whip damage, and you can counter against specific enemy abilities, thanks to most of the spells and the subclass. The 47th most played character in Smash Bros, despite being the main Nintendo dude, is Mario. For a classic character, I'm semi-surprised that he's so far down the list, but I've definitely built him before on the channel. You choose Dwarf for his short stature and iconic facial hair, go with Wild Spacer for the background to get the Super Mario Galaxy game involved in some way, shape, or form, then go with a Monk and go with Warrior of the Elements. This gets you plenty of punching, kicking, and jumping, while also getting plenty of elemental power-ups. Then multi-class into the Circle of the Moon Druid. So you can do all sorts of transformations thanks to Cappy, as well as other animal-focused power-ups. Then finish it off with a few levels in Fighter, and go with the Rune Knight subclass. So that way you can get a mushroom that makes you bigger, since the Rune Knight as a subclass allows you to increase your size. The 46th most popular character to play in Smash Bros. Is Jigglypuff, a puffball that can be very squishy. So for species, choose Plasmoid. Plasmoids are basically gloopy ooze creatures that can be easily squished and fit through tiny spaces. Then go with a Bard for your class to enhance your singing. Then amp that up with the College of Glamour subclass, which basically allows you to turn into an idol singer. Just don't forget to grab the Sleep spell and Alter Self or Primal Savagery to give yourself the ability to punch and deal some real damage. 45 gives us the Pokemon Trainer. I had to do a deep dive on this one because it involves 3 different Pokemon and the trainer themselves. So initially, I would build each Pokemon the trainer has differently, diving very deep into each one of their abilities. But if you want them to actually be captured Pokemon, lean into it, because there's a great way to do that, and having very similar builds for all 3 starters. The only major difference is the species. So with Squirtle, go with a Tortle, which is basically a turtle. For Ivysaur, go with a lizard folk, because even though they can be depicted semi-frog-like, I kind of look at them as being a bit more lizardy. Then Charizard is very obviously a Dragonborn. Then they all make a pact with the trainer. So go with a Warlock. And you can make them all captured Pokemon while utilizing their specific Pokemon types by choosing the Genie subclass. This gives them a Pokeball to hide in instead of the Genie Lamp, and they can specialize in their own elements since Genies have additional specializations like Earth, Fire, and Water types. Then the Trainer is actually just a Conjuration Wizard, since they're one of the best summoners in D&D, and you want to be able to fill out a Pokedex, which is similar to filling out your spellbook. Then at 44, we have King Dedede, a giant bird thing that can also bounce things off their belly and swing a massive hammer. So grab the noble background to get that king title taken care of. For a species, go with a Kenku, because they're a bird type species that can't really fly, and go with a berserker barbarian for the retaliation effect to bounce things off your belly, and you can focus on swinging the biggest hammer you can find. At 43, we have Pikachu. You're the icon of the Pokemon world, so you want a cute species like a Harengon, which is basically a rabbit creature, which I think is pretty close to the look of Pikachu. Then you want to be a bit more charisma focused, so go with Sorcerer, which is a charisma focused spellcaster. Specialize in lightning and thunder damage by choosing a Storm Sorcerer subclass, and grab the Sorcerer Metamagic Transmuted spell to turn any elemental spell into lightning or thunder damage. Then maximize that damage with 8 levels in Cleric and selecting the Tempest subclass. This allows you to automatically maximize lightning or thunder damage without needing to roll any dice. Then on top of it, it gives you the feature Thunderbolt Strike and even gives you the spell Call Lightning. At 42, we have Sheik, which is basically the ninja version of Princess Zelda. Although that might be a spoiler, even though it's an almost 30-year-old game, so I don't know if that counts as a spoiler anymore, but she's fast and she's essentially a shinobi. So for the species, either way, she's a high elf. They're basically noble elves, and you're Princess Zelda. If you were combining her with Zelda, it would be a multi-class, which I did for my deep dive video of her. But if you're just going with Sheik, which the latest Smash game does nowadays, since they kind of got rid of the transforming between them, you just want to go with pure shinobi with some quick attacks. So go with Monk for the incredible speed and quick attacks, then go with the Shadow subclass. It even gives you a smoke bomb teleport ability. That's the first half of all of the Smash characters. I need to break this into a 2-part video, so it's not so long that editing it won't be a nightmare. But for the final 41 videos, I've got another video coming out. So you make sure to subscribe and get notified for part 2. And if you want a character sheet for all of them, they're up on Patreon with full breakdown spells and a full 20 level build. It's a lot, but if you want to have your own Smash tournament in D&D, that's probably the way you're going to want to go. Otherwise, that's a lot of building to do. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session. And if you made it all the way here, there's a chance you might like one of my other videos, so I have one floating up here. But if my part 2 of this video is out already, I'll make sure that that's what shows up here. So make sure to click it so you don't miss out.